Very sad news as an absolute legend of the game has passed away. Boris Spasský, the 10th world champion, has died at the age of 88. He was ill for a long time. He was suffering for many years from some illness. And well, the news has been confirmed yesterday by the Russian Chess Federation. Boris Spasský was a world champion between 1969, when he won a world championship match against Tigran Petrosyan, retained his title till 1972. And we all remember that famous world championship match in Reykjavik, Iceland, 1972, against Bobby Fischer. Mainly people remember him for the guy being the opponent of Bobby Fischer in that match during the Cold War. But Boris Spasský was much more than that. He played brilliant chess, fearless attacking chess. But of course, later, also when playing that world championship title, he experienced a lot of pressure on the board, but also from the Soviet regime. So he was actually relieved to give up the title to Bobby Fischer, who became later actually a good friend of him. They even played that famous rematch in Yugoslavia in 1992. In any case, in this video, I would like to pay tribute to Boris Spasský's fearless attacking play by showing you one of his favorite games. That's actually what he mentioned even later in his career, that the game he played in 1960 against David Bronstein at the Soviet Union Championships in Leningrad. Well, this is an absolute epic game. You're going to enjoy it. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure to watch from the beginning till the end. And also subscribe to the channel. Thanks for supporting this channel. But here, I would like to show you how brilliant Boris Spasský actually was. He played almost always the move 1e4. And against e5, he loved to play the King's Gambit. Romantic opening, not often seen nowadays anymore at the very top. But back in 1960, oh man, this was what Boris Spasský loved to play. And actually, it's quite funny that David Bronstein, in one of his books, I think he even mentions like how could I decide to play 1e5, as I know he knew that Boris Spasský is going to play the King's Gambit. So yeah, King's Gambit and Boris Spasský is a good combination. Pawn takes f4, knight f3, d5, pawn takes d5, and rather than recapturing, Bronstein developed the bishop to d6, trying to stick to the pawn on f4. If white is about to recapture it, he's gonna invest a lot of time. But now also it will be harder for black to regain the pawn on d5. Knight c3 was played. There are various other possibilities as well, but let's not dive into the theory. I mean, these guys, they also were just playing the game, relying on their general understanding. Knight c3 is fine. Knight e7 is a fine move. White played here the move d4, and as you can see, the pawn on d5, it's kind of a nuisance. It's preventing black from getting the knight out to c6, and also the bishop has less squares available. In modern times, people would probably consider a move like c6, making a sacrifice out of it in order to get that knight out. Bronstein decided here to castle, bishop d3, and here he developed his knight to d7. And after castling kingside, how should black continue? Well, in my opinion, the most natural move here is to continue the development by bringing out the knight to f6, so that you're ready to take the pawn on d5. Also, the bishop can be developed. Position is more or less even in that case. But Bronstein instead played here this move h6, and that is a remarkable move. Does he really want to play something like g5 or maybe f5 later? It's not entirely clear to me why he actually played this move. But there followed now a very interesting sequence, as white played here the move knight e4, activating the knight, ready to trade off that piece for the bishop. And also white really would like to support a pawn on d5 with the move c4. So black is practically forced here to take on d5 that pawn. But now the pawn is coming to c4 with an attack on the knight. And well, the knight got to move somewhere, but it went to e3 to interfere on the diagonal, forking the queen and rook. So white is forced to give up the bishop for the knight. Pawn takes e3. And now white continues with very ambitious dynamical play. Pawn to c5, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to e7. And now, very nice classy move by Boris Spasský. As he played here the move bishop c2. It's a nice calm move to prepare this move queen d3, setting up a battery of queen and bishop, eyeing that h7 square. And that could lead to checkmate very quickly. Rook e8 was played in the game, and as announced, the move queen to d3. And look here you gotta be very, very careful. And well, there are still various possibilities. But now, funny moment here as Bronstein played here the move e2. He wanted to distract white from carrying out those ideas with a mating attack against the h7 square by attacking the rook. You may simply take that pawn on e2, but at least that slows down white's attack a bit. I mean, I still quite like white. I mean, a lot of people would think black has the bishop pair, but I really rate white's space advantage much higher. And I'm pretty sure that Spasský also felt that with ideas to get in all the pieces into the attack. This looks like a very promising position for white. Instead, now things are interesting. The rook is under an attack. Other people actually may even consider just play rook f2 and recapture the pawn on e2 with the rook. But Spasský had a different and absolutely amazing idea. He just moved the knight away, not to f6, check, because there's knight takes f6 and the h7 square is covered, but instead he went here for this move, knight to d6. He's attacking the rook. Most importantly, queen h7 followed by queen h8. That is the main threat. And how should black navigate himself here through this chaotic position? There are so many possibilities. And here, in fact, Bronstein made already a serious mistake. He dropped back with the knight to f8 to guard the h7 square. But probably the wisest way of playing here is to get rid of that knight on d6. Take it with the bishop, so that after queen h7, king f8, if you give a check here, the king can come to the center. After taking the bishop, threatening mate again as the pawn is covering the e7 square, it is possible to take the rook on f1 immediately. That could have been done earlier in the line as well. It comes with check. After rook takes f1, c takes d6. At this point, white is down a rook. But I'm pretty sure this was still calculated by Spasský. And as often in his games, he didn't really care about the objective evaluation of the position. He just felt like if the position is sharp and attractive, then he will find his way. And objectively speaking, the position is, if you analyze it now with an engine, it's completely equal somehow. But I have no idea what's going to happen. If you do play queen h8, check, king e7, rook e1, if the king goes away to f6, then the rook will be hanging. So you gotta block with a knight. After queen takes g7, now you're about to take the knight on e5 when you're only an exchange down. But look at that king; it's wide open. So this is far from clear. And well, apparently this is something Spasský had been aiming for. But let's get back to the game. After this move, knight f8. Now, one of the most spectacular moves in chess history was played by Boris Spasský, as he went here for this move, knight takes f7, removing very important pawn. We know a lot of typical sacrifices on that f7 square. Now you're attacking the queen. First, black decided here to take the rook on f1 with check, so it's a full rook sacrifice. But there's still a problem how to deal with the threat of knight takes d8. If you do take the knight with your king, this is going to end very badly. And look at what could have happened in the game if black would have taken the knight. There is knight e5 check. In fact, it's a double check. King g8. And now you may pause the video here for a second and think about an absolute amazing move to finish off the game. This must have been spotted by both players. As here, white has the stunning queen sacrifice, queen h7. You gotta take that queen. That's actually the reason the knight went to f8, but it will be met by bishop to b3 check. Now you can still interfere with the queen on d5 or with the bishop on e6. In both cases, those pieces are going to be taken. If the king goes into the corner, it is knight g6 with a beautiful smothered mate. So that is a very beautiful line. One of the reasons this game became so popular. It's all working tactically for white from this moment on. Instead, you can do something about your queen, like putting the queen on d5. But in that case, there is bishop b3. And, well, the queen got a move. But, well, there are not that many great squares. If you go away with the queen, there are always ideas to take on h6. And after king h8, you can go back again to f7. After king g8, it's knight g5, king h8. And, for instance, bishop f7 is one very convincing line, which is gonna win more material for white. The alternative could be to give up the queen on f7. In that case, black is actually having a rook and two bishops for the queen, which is materially speaking quite okay. The problem is the king's safety. Like, you can play here queen c4, forcing the king to go upwards. And then don't give another check on e5, as the king is able to hide in the corner again. But you rather start with queen g8, depriving the king from coming back. Now there are ideas to go either knight e5 or even knight h4. If you do play bishop f6, now the coolest move on the board here is knight h4, and it's absolutely game over. After bishop takes h4, queen f7, the king got to move again. You take the rook. Now it's a queen versus three minor pieces, but black's pieces, they are not working well together. And let's make it more concrete. If you save the knight, you can get your rook into the attack, attacking the pawn. If you move the pawn, you put a rook on c7, and the bishop is gone. It cannot go anywhere, as it will hang the rook in the corner. So back to the game. You understand why the knight was not taken, why the queen didn't go to d5, and instead Bronstein played here this move, bishop f5, setting up some sort of counterattack. Now after this move, queen takes f5, there is queen d7. But again, there are a lot of problems. Like the queen can just go anywhere. It went to f4 to maintain control over the knight. Bishop went to f6, so you're threatening to take on f7 at some point. But here white is having various interesting possibilities, including the move bishop b3 to create some threats on those light squares. Knight from f3 to e5 was played as you hit the queen on d7 and you're protecting the knight on f7. And it's difficult to suggest a good move. If you take on e5, which is the natural move, you take back with a knight, you're still in exchange down, but the queen is in trouble. It cannot really go to any light square because of bishop b3. And if you move the queen, let's say, to e7, at least there is queen to e4 with devastating threats. For instance, to eliminate a defender with rook takes f8 followed by queen h7. This is not going to end well. So in the game, instead of giving up the bishop, black played here queen e7 immediately, so that the bishop keeps the f-file closed. So that's understandable. But anyway, bishop b3 was played now. You can see some discovered checks coming up very soon, including knight takes h6. So now bishop takes e5 was played, knight takes e5. And, well, it's difficult to suggest a good move. But, for instance, if you do play knight e6, you're not really solving your problems. You're solving the check, but your light squares are so weak. There are those ideas to go knight g6 to attack the queen, and maybe get a knight to f4, maybe put a rook on e1. Very likely that knight is going to be hanging at some point. So black instead played here the move king to h7. But after queen e4, black actually resigned. There is no good move here available. If you go back with your king into the corner, there is this spectacular blow. Rook takes f8. As announced earlier, you just eliminate that main defender of black. And whatever you do, if you take with the rook on f8, there is a knight g6 check. The only square for the king is now to go to h7, but you can simply take the rook with a double check. So you cannot even block with a pawn here. You got to go king h8, and then it's queen h7 with checkmate. So that is one of the ways the game could have ended. But as said, after queen e4, black threw in the towel and resigned. So an absolute brilliant masterpiece against one of the best players of that time. I think this is a correct way to honor Boris Spassky for his brilliant chess life. I would like to tell him rest in peace, and I would like to thank you for watching, and hopefully many more games will be covered here on the channel to pay a tribute to Boris Spassky legacy. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.